For decades, the attuned lived with a constant companion, a soft, organic hum echoing in the back of the mind. It possessed the lonely, companionable sorrow of a cello played in an adjacent room, the signature of the cosmic entity known as the Dreamer. When the sunken city collapsed, the Dreamer withdrew into the lightless trenches of the continental shelf. The sudden absence of the sound left a physical weight in the chests of those left behind, a vacuum that felt like an internal bruise. Nature eventually filled that void with a different species of pressure. The atmospheric charge dropped, mimicking the static tension before a lightning strike, as a new and hostile frequency began to occupy the silence. This signal was aggressive and mechanical. It manifested as a relentless ticking, a driving cadence that vibrated through floorboards and masonry. It was the sound of a massive engine hammering against the dimensional barrier from the other side. In this universe, the most dangerous threats do not arrive in spaceships. They transmit as invasive frequencies, hunting for a human antenna to stabilize their arrival in our physical world. The ticking quickly transitioned from a psychological nuisance to a physical infection within the city's architecture. In the basements of Fetter Lane, the ancient foundational stones, built directly over the subterranean aquifers of the old Fleet Ditch, began to react. Heavy, colorless brine began weeping from the mortar joints, smelling of the deep ocean. The masonry itself took on a sickly bioluminescence, pulsing with a lagoon-colored light that synchronized perfectly with the ticking of the engine. Human biology proved just as susceptible to the rhythm. The fingernails of those exposed to the sound turned a leaden gray, shot through with iridescent threads forming impossible hexagonal lattices beneath the nail. The Dreamer required an invited mind to act as a gate, but the engine functions as a pressurized drill. It relies on a mechanized sequence to force its way through the density of our world without permission. By rewriting physical matter into biological telegraphs, the engine constructs a functional bridge. It maps the local environment, transforming ordinary limestone and human tissue into a cohesive resonator for its invasion. To complete the circuit, the Vanguard targets 3 ancient meteorite impact sites: the Arctic, the Kermetic Trench, and the Great Sand Sea. By grounding the signal at these geographic amplifiers, they can project the engine's ticking across the entire globe simultaneously. These nodes require a conscious stabilizing force to maintain the breach. To provide this, the Vanguard uses anchors, victims who have been surgically modified to act as living transmitters for the signal. In the Sahara, they utilize a missionary named Samuel Cross. Kept alive through synthetic chemistry, his ribs are wired open to ensure his conscious physical suffering can power the percussive frequency of the local transmitter. The engine uses human agony to grease the gears of its arrival. It treats the physical pain and focused attention of its victims as the primary fuel source required to breach our dimension. Standing against this global ignition is a team with almost no conventional firepower: Dr. Alistair Thorne, Silas Vance, and Dr. Helena Brandt. They carry a total ballistic reserve of exactly 16 revolver rounds to halt a global catastrophe. The team is defined by their own previous traumas. Thorne walks with a calculated stiffness due to his self-amputated toes, while Vance's hands are fused into rigid claws covered in silver burn tissue from the Arctic ice. Their guide, a geologist named Salt, is a living record of the Vanguard's failure. His skin has mineralized into gray stone, and webbing has formed between his fingers, but his human consciousness remains intact and dedicated to sabotaging the machine. Because the engine feeds on suffering, Thorne utilizes a strict medical neutrality to survive. He uses the phantom pain in his own ruined foot as a mental dampener, isolating his mind from the intrusive frequency of the ticking. In this conflict, the most effective armor against the ticking is a total refusal to engage with the physical pain. By maintaining a state of rigid clinical detachment, the team denies the engine the emotional fuel it requires to operate. Their only weapon against the engine is a carved whalebone talisman acquired from the Parisian penitents. Its surface is etched with spirals that defy standard geometric laws, housing a power that has nothing to do with traditional ballistics. This artifact doesn't fight the ticking with a competing sound. Instead, its marrow holds the physical memory of absolute emptiness. This is the empty one, a baseline void. When the engine's frequency encounters this silence, the signal finds no medium and is forced to recoil. This defense is strictly rationed. The talisman holds exactly 3 charges of this absolute silence before the internal pressure will cause the bone to shatter completely. Defense against the engine is not achieved through overwhelming force. It requires the introduction of a localized vacuum, a space that the machine's frequency is incapable of consuming. The team marches into the great sand sea of the Sahara, navigating the brutal heat to intercept the first ignition point at the subterranean altar. As they reach the crater, the silence of the desert vanishes. Every grain of sand begins to vibrate and tick like a microscopic gear. The entire landscape has been converted into a physical component of the engine's global metronome. The approach puts Salt at extreme risk. If his conscious focus relaxes for a single second, the ticking will bypass his mental defenses and completely rewrite his brain to serve the machine. Thorne prepares to deploy the first charge of silence as the mechanical percussion reaches its peak. He relies on the cold vacuum of the talisman to create a path through the noise. This encounter proves that surviving cosmic horror requires the ultimate clinical discipline. By stripping away fear and controlling their own attention, the team uses the power of the void to stand against an impossibly loud universe.